Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the June 7th, 2021 Harnett County Board of Commissioners regular meeting. This time I'll call this meeting to order and ask Vice Chairman Weatherspoon if he would lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today, Lord, thanking you for all the blessings you've given us, all the things that you've done for us. Lord, we ask you to be with us as we go through this meeting. Help us to do the things that are pleasing to you and the things that are good for the county. Lord, we ask you to continue to bless Harnett County and our state and our nation. Be with all the military that are serving to protect our freedoms. Be with our law enforcement, first responders, and just bless them and keep them safe, Lord. We ask all these things in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Weatherspoon. At this time, we'll consider any additions or deletions to the published agenda. Mr. Wood, you have anything this morning?
No, sir, nothing.
Okay. Hearing none and seeing no one approach, we'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as published.
I move we approve the agenda as published.
Thank you, Commissioner Witherspoon. Thank you, Commissioner Nickel, for the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda, Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We'll now enter a period of up to 30 minutes for informal comments, allowing 3 minutes per presentation. Would remind everyone to please be diplomatic in your comments and not accusatory. And at this time, I believe I see Mr. Rivas approaching. Mr. Rivas, you may have the floor. If you will state your name and address for us before you begin. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Jerry Rivas, 364 Twin Ponds Road, Sanford, North Carolina. A couple of items. There were some remarks made after I left the last meeting that the reason I lost my bid for Republican nomination for the office of sheriff was because I didn't know how to run a sheriff's department. I don't think the guy who's sitting back there does either. But I went to the State Board of Elections and started looking up records. I spent $2,700 of my money on my campaign. I took 2 donations totaling $300 because I didn't want to be beholden to anybody. In that same time period, my opponent spent $85,000. So did I lose an election or did somebody buy an election? And that's all I put 175 double-sided yard signs out. Every single one of my signs north of the river was stolen within 3 days. I got death threats. They would call me up, threaten my life. These were Wayne Coates supporters. I said, hey, my address is 364 Twin Ponds Road. Do you need directions and gas money? That's what kind of supporters that man has. The other thing is, at the budget meeting, as far as I'm concerned, the man either tried to extort this commission or bribe this commission by offering to pay for the dash cameras. Now, North Carolina's General Statute 128-16 says officers subject to removal for what offenses? Any sheriff or police officer shall be removed from office by the judge of the Superior Court resident in or holding the courts of the district where said officer is resident upon charges made in writing and hearing thereunder for the following causes. 1, for willful and habitual neglect or refusal to perform the duties of his office. When you guys say you want body cameras and he refuses. For willful misconduct or maladministration in office. for corruption, for extortion, which I think is what happened during that meeting. Now, I'm tired of people look at me and they say, he wears jeans and t-shirts. He's just an uneducated redneck. Don't make that mistake. Don't make the mistake of thinking that I'm some kind of simpleton. I'll match wits with anybody in this room on any subject. There's a couple of people in here I'd like to challenge to a spelling contest. But I'm tired of bullies with badges. I love police officers. We gotta have them. But I've heard we got deputies that say, I won't work for a department that makes me wear a body camera. Well, they don't deserve the honor or the privilege to wear a badge because that's a thug. That's all that is. You don't want to wear a body camera, you're a punk.
Thank you, Mr. Rivas.
Your turn, Chief.
Good morning, Ms. Miller. Thank you.
Good morning. Marge Miller, 89 Crabtree Tree Court, Fuquay Marina. I imagine that in the past, a previous Board of Commissioners approved a request for funds from a legitimate nonprofit organization under the most honorable of intentions. They then established a policy that would review future requests and recommend an action for the board's consideration. The fact that both the number of requests and the total monies requested keeps increasing yearly indicates that it is a time to reconsider not only the process, but the legitimacy of using taxpayer money to fund nonprofits. Because the county will not be funding nonprofits for the coming fiscal year, it would be the perfect time to determine how to move forward on this matter. I am not aware of any statutory language requiring counties to fund nonprofits, but it can be a worthy thing to do. However, the current process creates a daunting task for the review committee as the number of applicants increases, and it creates an impossible task for the county to fund the said request. The county is a caring entity, but does that fact enable and encourage organizations to rely on taxpayer money to meet their bottom line? And worst of all, does it send a message that government is the solution for all problems? I personally hope not. Please use the coming year to determine if the county wishes to fund nonprofits in the future. And if so, to establish a new policy with criteria and parameters that will restrict the number of applicants and monies available, and will make the task easier for the review committee to establish the legitimacy and the priorities of such requests. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Langley.
Good morning. My name is Joe Langley, and I'm a resident at 298 Kirk Adams Road. I'm the chairman of the board of directors for the Harnett County Partnership for Children, and I also serve on the Robin Page Boys and Girls Club Advisory Board and as the vice president of the Central Carolina Boys and Girls Clubs. These organizations have requested nonprofit funding assistance from the county in the past or in the upcoming budget year. I'm here today with a request of the Harnett County Board of Commissioners regarding the funding of nonprofit organizations for the upcoming fiscal year. My request is presented in the form of an endorsement of the statement made by Dawn Neighbors of the North Carolina Community Foundation in Friday's Dunn Daily Record. And I quote Ms. Neighbors at this time. I would respectfully ask the Board of Commissioners to reconsider their complete abandonment of nonprofit funding in our county. I would request also that a plan be set in place immediately to adhere to the policies outlined by the county in order to fund nonprofit organizations next year and in the future. These policies should be easily accessible and made to the public. At this time, I'd like to add my own additional recommendations to what Ms. Neighbors' comments were, and they are as follows. Number one, the reinstatement of the nonprofit funding should be done in accordance with the wishes of the Nonprofit Funding Committee, which all commissioners charged with the task of equitable distribution of these funds. And number two, in keeping with an ongoing theme that I have, and in keeping with the county's commitment to financial transparency, as the county plans next year's budget, I believe that it would be appropriate for the county to post on the Harnett County website all applications that are submitted and approved by each nonprofit organization. This gives taxpayers clear documentation of each applicant's need, and it also ensures that all taxpayer funds are distributed to each of these nonprofits based on the merit of their application without any prejudice. Finally, it's essential that all commissioners understand one very important component of nonprofit funding. For many of these organizations to receive other government grants, they must demonstrate that they have the support of the local government. This necessary support could be absent if the funding is not provided by the county. Almost done.
Thank you, Mr. Langley. We appreciate that. Anyone else like to speak this morning? Seeing no one move, is there anyone on the phone who would like to speak this morning? Hearing none, I'll move to close this period for public comment. I believe our next item on the agenda is appointments.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We have a few appointments today. The Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee, Larry Alexander has requested to be appointed to that committee. The Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee, I think last month Holly Geiger was put on that committee in error, but she has requested to be moved from the Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee and to be reappointed to the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee. We have openings on the Board of Health for a physician. There's a vacancy in District 2 for the Board of Equalization and Review, and there's an opening on the Triangle South Workforce Development Board. Two additional appointments that have been requested are the Harnett County Library Board. On May the 11th, 2021, at the Dunn City Council meeting, Gloria Gullidge was unanimously approved to continue as the Dunn representative on the Harnett County Library Board. Mayor Elmore respectfully requests that this Board of Commissioners approve and reappoint Ms. Gullidge to continue her role on the board with term to expire on June 30, 2024. And the Dunn Planning Board on May the 11th, 2021, at the Dunn City Council meeting, Gary Beasley was unanimously approved to continue as the ETJ representative on the Dunn Planning Board with term to expire June 30, 2024. Mayor Elmore respectfully requests that the Harnett County Board of Commissioners approve Mr. Beasley's appointment to the board. And that is the sum total of my motion.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Do I hear a second?
Johnson seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Those appointments do carry. Thank you. At this time, we have the consideration of approval for the Harnett County fiscal year budget 2021-22. Mr. Wood?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we have done, I've given you two sheets. The first one is a spreadsheet, which Lisa Murkowski has done, and this is all of the items from your budget request. Your budget work session, the last one, all of these that you indicated you wanted to amend the budget by. So all of those are in. We did have one item that came up, and that is that as we got into the sheriff's request for the 10% reclassifications, which is 2 steps up on the pay plan for each officer classification, we found that we were short by $192,538. Now, what we met with the sheriff on was to go over 2 options. One option was we could delay that implementation by roughly 3 months, and that would cover that shortfall for this year. The second option was for him to look at paying for a portion of the jail video surveillance equipment from his forfeiture fund and reducing the amount we transfer over from the general fund by $192,538. And we would take that money we saved in the general fund and basically plug this hole. And then we would be able to give those increases this year. And we would want to commence that on the payroll beginning July 16th. And I'm going to ask Kimberly to go over why that is and how we have to accrue back the July 15th payroll. So if you'll go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Commissioners. The reason we would have that to start effective July 16th is so it would coincide with our fiscal year, because at the end of July, when that payroll is made, that only includes the first 2 weeks in July. So to be able to afford this and to budget that back, we would request that it start on July 16th to coincide with a full payroll.
Okay. The second item that I've given you is if you're in agreement with all the changes that you discussed at the work session and you have no other further changes other than to consider this with the sheriff's 10% grade reclassifications, then I've prepared a motion for you that would do that would adopt the entire budget in the agenda packet as adopted, as printed, subject to the following amendment to cover the shortfall in funding the sheriff's office request to reclassify all sworn law enforcement personnel 2 grades higher on the pay plan, which is a 10% change in compensation. And then I list the changes you would need to make. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. When you do a reclassification in an organization that's hierarchical like that, you've got to address each job classification in there, because if you don't, for instance, there might be 2 or 3 steps or grades, between the next classification up. And so if you don't take them all up, then you're going to have salary compression, which is where wherever you would draw a line and say, well, we're not going to give any above that, then there's really no incentive for those people to take those jobs, because there's no additional much pay with that from that point forward. So with that, our recommendation is that you go forward with the change that the sheriff has requested and use the $192,538 from his asset, not asset forfeiture, well, yeah, it is, the asset forfeiture fund to pay for the difference that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Thank you, Ms. Honeycutt. Any questions, commissioners, for Mr. Wood or Ms. Honeycutt at this time? Commissioner McCoy?
I listened to you very carefully, but I want to make sure that I understand exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The additional funds to address the salary. That address the salary, interim salary, as well as those that are already in those positions.
That's correct.
That's what I want to know, simply because if we don't address both,
No, we're addressing both.
because we still have a problem if we don't address both.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. The other thing I'd left out, the reason for the mistake was they had not taken into consideration the Campbell University officers and the SROs, and that's where the difference came in. And you cannot take up some deputy sheriffs and not all. So we had to add those in because every one of those is a deputy sheriff.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Right. So this includes, if you look at the language, it includes every sworn law enforcement personnel. Now, it does not include the jailers because they're certified jailers, and you did something for them, I believe, last year, if I remember correctly.
Yes, we increased their pay last year.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? Hearing none, do I have a motion on this year's fiscal budget with these amendments or changes to what was, or to the original proposal?
Mr. Chairman, I move the fiscal year 2022 budget as amended and presented in the agenda packet be adopted, subject to the following amendment to cover the shortfall in funding the Sheriff's Office requests to reclassify all sworn law enforcement personnel 2 grades higher on the pay plan, which is a 10% change in compensation. Item 11-09800, 598-500, reduce the transfer from the general fund to the Sheriff's Capital Reserve Fund, Fund 510, by $192,538. Item 110-4310, 50-2010, budget an additional $192,538 in the Sheriff's Department salaries and benefits. These amounts will be distributed among departments 110-4330, 110-4350, 110-4370, and 110-4390. And increase the Sheriff's Asset Forfeiture Fund, Fund 217, appropriation $192,538 to pay for a portion of the jail video surveillance equipment.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. 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 All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again for all of your hard work. Lisa, we appreciate all the time and effort you put in that. Mr. Wood, Ms. Honeycutt, everybody here, thank you so much. I know it was a monumentous task to try to get all that together, but we really appreciate it. All right, that brings us to item 8, administration request approval for an agreement with the School of Government to engage in the UNC School of Government Center for Public Leadership and Governance in the facilitation of a strategic planning process for Harnett County. Mr. Haney?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
The item you have before you is a service agreement with School of Government Services for the facilitation of a strategic plan for the county. Following previous presentations and direction from the board, we have engaged with the UNC School of Government Center for Public Leadership and Governance regarding the facilitation of a strategic planning process for the county. They have recommended a 3-phase approach, with the first phase consisting of development of preliminary plan elements, including a vision, mission, and values for the county. The second phase will consist of development of a final strategic plan, and the third phase will involve operationalizing the plan with the development of performance management plan for the county. The service agreement you have before you today covers the first 2 phases. We have identified funding in the current year to begin the process, and additional funds have been included in the budget for fiscal year 22 to move that forward. We will use feedback from the first 2 phases to inform the scope of the third phase, which will be finalized and contracted separately. In order to facilitate the strategic planning process, the School of Government is bringing in Rebecca Jackson, the Chief of Staff and Chief Performance Officer with the City of Fayetteville, who manages the city's Strategic Performance Analytics Office and has considerable experience with strategic planning and performance management. With that, I'm available for any questions you have, and assuming you vote to move forward today, I do have a couple of dates to make you aware of and to get your direction on.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. Any questions for Mr. Haney? I do believe it's been some number of years since the county has developed the strategic plan. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I guess my only comment would be that if we're going to embark on this journey and spend this money, I want it to be something that is beneficial for us going forward. I have seen strategic plans too often in the past just be something to check off the box. So I want this to be meaningful so that we can help shape the direction and the future planning for this county as we go along. That would be my expectation.
That is definitely our goal and has been made clear also to the vendor. So we're excited to do that.
Thank you. Okay, hearing no further questions or comments, I'll ask for a motion on this item.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the agreement with the School of Government. Move forward with the strategic planning process.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. We have a motion on the floor to move forward with this. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherspoon. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Haney.
With that.
Oh, excuse me, you said you had a
Just
couple
one
of
more
things. Yeah,
question.
sorry.
As part of the first phase, Ms. Jackson would like to schedule one-on-one interviews with each commissioner and senior county management between today and June 22nd, which we'll handle those outside of this meeting, obviously. And an orientation session for county department heads has tentatively been scheduled for June 22nd. We will also need to schedule a Board of Commissioners retreat in mid-July that will take place over 2 consecutive half-days, and the product of that retreat will be the creation of that mission, vision, and values for the county. I've identified several options for you to choose from that I'll make you aware of now, and you're either welcome to decide on that today, or we can bring it back at the next work session for discussion. The options are Tuesday, July 13th, and Wednesday, the 14th. Again, these are half-day sessions. This option would use the July 13th work session as part of the retreat, so it doesn't require an additional meeting, and then a portion of the following day. The next option would be Wednesday, July 14th, and Thursday, July 15th, which would leave your work session as is, and schedule the retreat over the following 2 mornings or afternoons, depending on your choice. And the other option is Monday, July 19th, and Tuesday, July 20th. This option would have the first session taking place the afternoon before your evening board meeting on that day, on the 19th, with the second session the following day. So those are the options that we've identified around your schedule to kind of make that work. Do you have any thoughts now, or would you like me to let you think about it and bring it back to you at the work session?
What is the pleasure of the commissioners?
I think we need to think about it, what date's gonna work.
I agree. Let us, let's give everyone a chance to check their schedules. I do know that would be a prime time for summer plans and vacations. So let's check the schedules and communicate, see if we can find something that works for everyone.
Sounds great.
Okay? Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Haney.
Chairman?
Yes, Mr. McCoy.
I would suggest that Brian send those dates that he out to us on our computers.
That'd be fine. If you'll send those to us, and
Absolutely.
then each commissioner can respond as to their availability during that time. If one of those works, we'll be in business. If not, we'll look further.
All
Okay?
right, perfect, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, approval of guaranteed maximum price contract, GMP for Northwest Harnett Elementary School project. Mr. Wood?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, just to give you a little background, y'all probably already know this, but the school board has employed what's called a construction manager at risk, and that's where they take proposals and they go through a selection process for a construction manager at risk, you can think of them similarly to the general contractor on the job. So they're over all of the subcontractors. They then have to bid out each individual component of the work, just as if the school board was bidding those out. And what you have before you from Metcon is that bid sheet, and it shows that the prices that came in, what the school board is recommending to you is, and they've approved, is $39,602,900. And you'll notice that also includes the all of the CMAR fees down at the bottom. Does everybody see all of that? So the only thing you don't have here is the architect's fee for the actual design and oversight of the construction. So just to refresh everyone's memory, we're getting ready to go out on a $43 million general obligation school bond, and that's how this will be funded. If you take that, we are estimating, our bond financial advisors are estimating that we'll have about a $5 million premium. And I won't bother you with how we arrive at a premium this time, but when we get to bonds, I'll go into more detail on that. But that would give you a total proceeds of about $48 million. If you subtract the architect's fee, which currently is at $2,095,000, and then you subtract the guaranteed maximum price of $39,600,000, that would leave an unappropriated balance of $6,305,000. And as y'all know, you were going to use that for other educational projects. So you might want to make a note of that. That's what our estimate is now. One thing I should note, these bids are about 1.5 million higher than what the original estimate was, but I think you all know we've had major increases in steel and other building materials. So that's where we sit right now. I understand there's a representative from the school board here, or administration, if you have any questions about the bids.
It's actually, I believe we have Mr. Tom Hughes, who's the architect on the project.
Okay.
Mr. Hughes, would you like to have anything you'd like to share? Or add to anything Mr. Wood has said?
No, I think that's correct. I think the only thing that perhaps you need to include in that is
Mr. Hughes, if you don't mind, step up to the microphone. We've got some people listening online or on the phone. Thank you.
Tom Hughes with SFL&A Architects.
Thank you.
Thank you. The bids did come in a little over. I think we've seen a major increase in steel costs, mostly promulgated through a sort of domination in the market of big box construction, primarily with Amazon, and really buying up sort of a lot of the open web steel joists and steel deck parameters of that. The one thing that I would add, Mr. Wood, and we didn't have really a chance to talk yet, is that within this funding, this is for the project construction funding. You mentioned the architect's fee. There is also an allocation for fixtures, furniture, and equipment and technology that goes on top of that as well. So some of that $6 million, I think, becomes part of the necessary expenditure for that. And I have some budget numbers that you and I can get together on for that too. So I would encourage you to, that part of that unallocated monies will be going towards FF&E, what we term for fixtures, furniture, and equipment in the overall project expense. It was primarily steel costs. I mean, really almost double, a little over double the cost that we expected for steel. And it sort of rippled itself through everything that had steel in it, whether it was kitchen equipment, stainless steel, standing seam metal roof. We all sort of saw those numbers come up. We have urged you to move ahead because the market continues to escalate. And at 6% a year, any delays might only incur more costs. We also have a scheduled bond closing date or bond bid date of July 13th and a bond closing scheduled for August, I believe, August 4th, Mr. Wood.
I think that's right.
Right. So the move, I think it is in your best interest to move ahead with the project. And we will continue to work with Metcon and the suppliers, Nucor and Boltcraft and all of the joist suppliers to recognize some economy that we can bring back to the district as well.
Yeah, we would appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Any questions for Mr. Hughes before he departs? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the guaranteed maximum price on the Northwest Harnett Elementary School project. Well, here none, I'll make the motion to approve the budget, the guaranteed maximum price contract, the GMP for the Northwest Harnett Elementary School project. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Nichol. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to approve a budget amendment for fiscal year 2021 budget covering the airport from June 17th, 2021 to June 30th, 2021. Mr. Wood?
Yes, sir. As y'all know, we take over the operation of the airport June 17th from the FBO. And so we need to have a budget in place to authorize expenditures through June 17th through June 30th of this fiscal year. And so that's what this budget amendment is about.
Any questions for Mr. Wood? Hearing none, do I hear a motion regarding the approval of the budget amendment for fiscal year 2021 to cover the airport from June 17th through June the 30th, which will be the end of this fiscal year?
Mr. Chairman, Johnson makes a motion to approve the amendment for budget for the airport for 2021, covering the airport from June 17th to June the 30th, 21.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nichol. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion regarding the acting county manager's recommendation on diversity, equity, and inclusion training.
Mr. Chairman, I've given y'all about a page-and-a-half memo on this. I'm recommending that we go forward with it, but on the condition that it meet the criteria set out in House Bill 324, and I've attached a copy of that House bill. That bill has passed the North Carolina House. It has been referred over to the Senate, and it is in one of their committees now being reviewed. But I think it's very specific about what can and cannot be taught. This bill specifically deals with what can and cannot be taught in schools, but I think it's a good overview, and I don't think we should be doing any training that is not in conformance with this, because it's a very good likelihood this will end up being state law. So my recommendation to you is we move forward with the training, but subject to being done in the framework of this bill 324. I should add that, as I said in the memo, we had given Dr. Allen an opportunity to look at the bill. She has since come back and said she will not be able to participate in it, but Ms. McCoy has given me the name of an individual who works for another county who does this sort of thing. I've also been in contact with the school superintendent, because Harnett County Schools is also looking at doing some sort of training in this regard. And we're going to also get in touch with their person, and then I have information on a third person as well. So instead of contracting with Dr. Allen, which was my recommendation to you, I'm going to ask that you authorize me to contract with someone with requisite qualifications to go ahead and provide this training. In the alternative, you can just wait and let me bring that person back to you with a recommendation at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we table this issue until we hear from the General Assembly what the final outcome of their bill is. And also it gives Mr. Wood an opportunity to put together the items that he wants to address.
Chairman Johnson seconds that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? If I could, Commissioner Weatherspoon, just a point of clarification, your motion would still allow Mr. Wood to continue to explore any possible options, and when and if he found one that he thought would fit into the scope of the bill that has been passed by the House, would bring that back for further discussion. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner McCoy?
I don't understand the motion. And the reason I don't understand the motion is because what is proposed in the bill is what we would be looking to address here in Harnett County. And if you commissioners read it, they can see that they are addressing issues that affect Harnett County. Every employee here in Harnett County needs to feel that they are valued.
That's right.
And to accomplish that, I'm the one that proposed this and with the school board. And I think that I'm not going to object to his proposal. But what I'm saying is I don't understand the proposal because we need this in Harnett County. And the reason I'm saying this because there's so much misunderstanding of what we're trying to do. This county is only trying to do what every other county in this state is trying to do. And make this a better place, a better workplace for our government workers. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Any further comments or questions?
Yes, I have one. I think the reason for the tabling is just to wait to see what gets passed higher up before we go ahead and make this decision now. And then, we're stuck with something that's not legally binding according to the state. So, yeah, I would agree to table it to wait and see what the outcome is. So we're not being contradictory towards what the state decides, even though it looks like it's progressing in that manner, just out of caution.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. Any further comments or questions?
Yes, Commissioner Johnson, I want time to be able to study this handful of paperwork I got before I decide how to vote on it. It's not reasonable to hand me this and say, vote on this. You don't have an opportunity to study it. I want to study this and see what's going on in this bill.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. This time we'll vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion, proposed motion to, or regarding the acting county manager's recommendation on reopening county operations and masking requirements that was in your packet. Mr. Wood?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'll just paraphrase some of this. Basically, this is in reaction to Governor Cooper's order, Executive Order number 215 of May 14, where he lifted some of the state restrictions. I did attach a copy of his executive order for your review. Specifically, it removed all capacity restrictions and removed the requirement to wear a mask. Social distancing requirements were removed as well. There are exceptions which we have taken into account in our recommendation. His executive order does recommend masks for those not vaccinated. It does not require it, but it recommends those. So in talking to our health director, John Rouse, it's estimated that no more than 50% of our workforce has been vaccinated. As of March 27th, 24.2% of the citizens in Harnett County had been fully vaccinated. 64.2% of those over age 65 are fully vaccinated. And of course, that's the most susceptible population group. We have seen a marked decrease in both cases and deaths recently, and I've attached that information for you as well. I think it's instructive that both Texas and Florida governors have recently moved to relax their requirements. More states are beginning to follow suit. Those two states have now fared far better than states such as New York, California, and Michigan that continued some of the harshest lockdowns. And even Dr. Fauci has said he cannot explain the differences. A study by Denmark found that masking was of minimal use. A group of epidemiologists and other scientists at Stanford University have said the usefulness of masking is minimal. In my view, the best test of any theory is how well it predicted what occurred. We now have data from Texas and Florida, and other states, including Georgia and Oklahoma, are opening up, providing more data. Opening these states has not resulted in a spike in deaths. As noted above, they are doing much better than the severest lockdown states. And they have the added benefit that they are no longer infringing on their citizens' rights to worship, to assemble, to attend schools and universities, and even to operate their own businesses. It has improved their economies, their citizens' mental health and physical health by getting medical services back to normal, and has removed the need for the state to finance unemployment and other benefits required when businesses are shut down for a prolonged period. We now have effective vaccinations for the virus. We have treatments for those who get infected if caught early. We have sufficient testing supplies to perform early detection. We have data proving that the most vulnerable populations are who they are and steps that we can take to protect them. We know our deaths in Harnett County have dropped significantly, as have cases. We had a peak of 551 new cases in the week beginning January 3rd. For the last 3 weeks, those numbers are 152, 100, and 81. So you can see the trend is very positive on that. Finally, we have the evidence from these earlier opening states that shows removing these restrictions has not caused a spike in deaths. Given this information, my recommendation is that you rescind both of the existing policies, but keep the requirement for masking for the following county functions as required by the governor's executive order. A, healthcare facilities. B, emergency medical services. C, hearts, drivers, and passengers. And D, the detention center. And since I wrote this, I've become aware of one more, and that is that we would have to do the same thing for our employees at the jet port because they are transportation-related employees, and that's how the governor's executive order reads. It should be noted that his executive order still recommends wearing masks and social distancing for those that have not been vaccinated. Also, any employee or citizen can continue to wear a mask if they wish to do so in county facilities. So my recommendation is that you stop the two policies you have in place. The last part of this issue is whether to fully open public access to county offices and public meetings, and whether our employees who have been teleworking, in other words, working from home, should return to normal workplaces. My recommendation is that you fully open public access to all county facilities and public meetings effective immediately. I further recommend that teleworking employees be required to request from their department heads to continue teleworking, giving all of their justifications. The request would be reviewed on a case-by-case basis by their department head and my office to determine if it is in the county's best interest to allow teleworking. The key considerations in that determination will be the need to provide adequate staffing at the normal workplace to accommodate the service needs of our citizens. And that's the paramount issue. We need to make sure that when a citizen comes in for service, that all of our offices are adequately staffed to provide that service. So that's first and foremost in my mind about it. We need to take into account the workload impact on fellow employees if some are allowed to telework, the ability to measure employee productivity during telework, and any unique employee situations. We want to get our operations back to normal as quickly as possible, so I recommend giving employees 1 week to make these requests, and then Brian Haney and the HR director and I will look at each one of those and make a determination. One related issue I just wanted to address is the difficulty our business community is having in filling job vacancies. As you know, Congress extended the additional $300 per week federal unemployment benefit until September of 2021. In some states, unemployed citizens can receive more in combined federal and state benefits than from a full-time job. This incentivizes not going back to work. And these added benefits are being paid by the U.S. government going into further debt. Governor Cooper has issued a new executive order, 216, that requires all existing and new claimants for unemployment benefits to register with a job seeker account at ncworks.gov and contact at least 3 different potential employers each week. But it does not discontinue the $300 per week federal employment subsidy as several states have done. So that's the status of where we're at on that issue now, and I wanted you to be aware of that. So we have some movement in trying to push these folks to get back into the workforce, but the governor has not basically taken away the $300 federal subsidy at this point. So that's my recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. You heard Mr. Wood's recommendation. Are there any questions for Mr. Wood at this time?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Johnson. I have a question for Mr. Wood.
Yes, sir.
You talked about masks. What are your thoughts on continuing the hand sanitizing stations in county buildings?
I don't have any problem with that at all.
Good, thank you.
If people want to do that, I'm perfectly okay with that.
All right, thank you, sir.
Commissioner McCoy, I have a question too. I understand that it's still optional for our employees to wear masks.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
And I do hope that you still can take under consideration that some people have underlying conditions.
Yes,
And we don't know who has had the shots and who has not had the shots.
that's right.
So personally, I hope you take that under consideration. And if a person want to wear a mask, you'd already said that. And I hope the public understand that.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. We need to emphasize that. Anyone who's uncomfortable, whether they work for us or they're the public, they're certainly free to wear a mask at any time.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Wood at this time? Okay, you've heard Mr. Wood's recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion that we accept Mr. Wood's recommendation and implement it as we move forward.
Commissioner Johnson, second that motion.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Witherspoon, a second by Commissioner Johnson. Any further discussion on this topic? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Longest 14 days of my life.
Amen.
Okay, next, Mr. Wood, I think we, again, turn to you for an update on the selection of a permanent county manager.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I've handed out a booklet to you. We got them in Friday, and I wanted y'all to be aware of it. What I was going to ask you to do, it's about 63 pages, but it's a relatively small book, so it's not 63 full pages. But I would highly recommend that y'all read through this during the week. We have scheduled on our work session for the 15th, which is next Tuesday, to have an in-depth discussion on the next steps on hiring a manager. This booklet, I used it in Buncombe County. They found it very effective. And I would highly recommend that you read the process, pay attention to the steps involved, but also particularly what your role is in this whole process. And you are the decision makers in this process. The whole purpose of going through this process is to make sure that you are comfortable with who you select. And so I'll be going into more detail at the work session. But as you read through it, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give me a call. I'll be happy to discuss it with you. But I think it's a good primer in what we're going to be going through so that you have a clear understanding of it. I will tell you, it typically is about a 5 to 6 month process. A lot of that is going to depend. The first question that we'll need to address as you're reading through this and it'll be the first thing on our agenda on the work session, is we need to make a decision on whether you want to use an outside executive search firm. And of course, you've already gotten proposals from them. My understanding is that each of you has those proposals, a copy of those proposals. I would ask before the meeting that you also review those and have some idea of who you think you would like to see called in for an interview. But the threshold question for us is, do you want to use an executive search firm or do you want to do it in-house? Because if you want to use an executive search firm, it's probably going to add about 30 days to the process, but there are some advantages to doing that. And we'll go over those at the next meeting. But so if you'd read this booklet and review those proposals, and when we get together on the 15th, we'll be ready to have a good discussion about where you want to go from here, and we'll get the process started.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any questions regarding this matter from Mr. Wood at this time? Mr. Wood, I do want to express my appreciation to you for your willingness to lead us through this process, and I am comforted by the knowledge that you've done this before. So yes. I appreciate your background and experience, and looking forward to your leadership as we work through this process.
Thank you.
Next, we have our county manager's report. Mr. Wood?
You have in your packet the Harnett County DSS monthly report, the Keep Harnett Beautiful 2021 Spring Litter Sweep Volunteer Impact Report. We just wanted to remind everybody that we have the Economic Development Symposium for Harnett County business and industry leaders and organizations. That's tomorrow morning. So just wanted to remind everybody of that. And then lastly, we have a letter from the town of Angier regarding their opposition to House Bills 401 and 456, dealing with annexation and zoning. And I think that's pretty much it. I did want to update you briefly. We did have the call on June 2nd with both Moody's Investor Services and Standard & Poor's Global Services. The reason for that is we are going through the bond ratings for the bond issue we're getting ready to do. And we felt that both the meetings went well. They were by telephone, and we're waiting answers from them. I believe both of them indicated we probably have an answer around the 18th of June, which is plenty of time before the bonds are sold on July 13th. So those folks who want to bid on it will have that information before they submit their bids.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Wood on his report?
Mr. Wood, it's my understanding, I don't know what action Town of Angier wants us to take on this letter they sent in, but it's my understanding, one, that they have not mailed a letter of opposition to their legislative delegation, and that's via one of the commissioners, town commissioners. And second of all, in talking to some of our legislative delegation, this bill has got very little chance, if any, of ever passing. Okay. Either one of them. Okay. They're bad bills.
Well, we appreciate the update. I did leave one thing off, and that is, of course, we're opening the airport the 17th of this month. We are in the process of interviewing the folks out there and some other folks, and we'll make decisions on those hirings early part of next week, so we'll be ready to go on the 17th.
Thank you for that update. Anything else, Mr. Wood?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, next item on the agenda would be new business. Is there any new business to come before this body today? Okay, hearing nothing, I do believe we have need to go into a closed session.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I move that the board go into closed session for the following purposes: consultation with the county's legal counsel in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege concerning the handling of certain claims and litigation, including the following case: Estate of John David Livingston II and others versus Cahagas and others, U.S. District Court, Eastern District of North Carolina, Western Division File Number 5, CV-00906-B0. This motion's made pursuant to North Carolina General Statute, Section 143-318.11A3.
Thank you, Commissioner Witherspoon. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? We'll move into closed session. Thank you. A motion in closed session, return to open session. I'll call open session back to order. At this time, the Harnett County Board of Commissioners will host the 2021 Legislative Luncheon in the training room, the Harnett County Resource Center and Library. Conclusion of the luncheon, the board will recess again until June 8th, 2021 at 9 a.m. and reconvene in the Harnett County Resource Center and Library training room for the Economic Development Symposium for Harnett County business and industry leaders and organizations. So at this time, we will recess. Thank you.